Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Scott Wolter is here. More on that in just a second. I've got to update everybody on the schedule this week because tomorrow night is Fader night, not Thursday. So we're going to do open lines tomorrow night. Wednesday night, Holly Marie is here. And Thursday night is a special broadcast with Richard Dolan. And we had to shift everything around this week because of Scott Wolter. He's such a pain in the butt. Never, Scott, you just never, you're not easy, man. But before we get to that, let me do a little introduction. Can I do an introduction?
Yeah.
Let's do something proper. Scott Wolter, author, host of America Unearthed, and has been president of the American Petrographic Services since 1990. He's responsible for the independent analysis testing of the Kensington runestone, which he brought forward in 2000. He's been the principal petrographer in more than 5,000 investigations throughout the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. 5,000. Scott, you're not even that old. Stop.
Actually, the number's up to 10,000, so keep going.
Okay. Including the evaluation of fire damage concrete at the Pentagon following the attacks of September 11th, 2001. And tonight, exclusively here on Fade to Black, we are preempting all of the networks because exclusively we're going to discuss Season 4 of America Unearthed and announce what we can expect with the premiere and future episodes. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black the one and only Scott Wolter. Scott, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Jim. I'm really doing good. There's all kinds of stuff happening, and I'm excited to be here on your show and talk about America Unearthed.
Same thing.
Season 4. No, I was doing voiceovers today.
Yeah.
Like for 2 hours, and you know how it gets you. You're reading the script and you're talking, you're trying to project, and after a while, everything just turns to mush in your mouth.
You should let me do your voiceovers. That would be cool. It'd be like it would be like when. When you see yourself,
your voice is so freaking good. I'm not going to let you do it because they wouldn't even let me go near the place again.
Oh man, it's so funny. Voiceover is really, really fun, and when you do it for your own show, you're putting more of yourself into it, and you get to add that color commentary, and you tend to be in control, especially if you've got somebody directing you in the studio that isn't, telling you, what to do and what to say. And that's really cool. I really enjoy it.
Well, you know what? I do enjoy it, but I do have somebody who's directing me because I'm not a professional like you. I mean, I'm I catch on relatively quickly, but I'm not kidding. I'm not a professional, and when they're coaching you and telling you how to do things, you just have to put your ego aside and realize that, when it comes to rocks, I can tell them what's going on. But when it comes to, this type of thing, they're the pro, and I have to just shut up. Well, not shut up, but I have to listen and take that coaching. And, sometimes I'll tell you, there have been a few Effenheimers that have come out of that recording booth because I get frustrated sometimes when I don't do what I think I can do, but they hang in there. They have a lot of patience, and we get through it. So I have a lot of respect for people that use their voice for a living, and I'm not just trying to pat you on the back. I mean, it's not as easy as people think. There's a lot of work that goes into it because you're such a professional. You've done it for so long. It comes easy, but it's not easy. And you know what I'm talking about.
I do. This is what it's like for me when I do voiceovers. I'll be in the studio and the line, I'll read the line. The line is whatever. So we're here to cover the conspiracy that is taking over the world. And then I'll hear it in my talk back. Okay, now do it with a little more aggressiveness. Okay. We're here to cover the conspiracy that is taking over the world. It'll be identical, right? And I'll look through the glass, and they're just like, whatever, just let him do it. I only have one zone You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're full throttle all the time.
Just got one shade of Jimmy. So now, okay, let's get straight to it, Scott. We've got a lot to discuss tonight.
Yeah.
And I want to say this, that you never stop working. And I do tend to start off every show with you, no matter when or where we do it, by throwing you under the bus. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to start off with that tonight. In that, you and I talked quite a few times, not only this week, but over the last couple of weeks. And every conversation that I have had with you, whether you're out on location shooting or what, you were working, you were studying, you were looking at photographs, you had investigators over, you're getting ready to go and shoot, and just like today, one more conversation with you, you were working. Do you ever, I'm serious, besides football, do you ever take time off? Is your foot on the gas 24/7?
Well, it's probably on the gas more than it should be, but there's just so much cool stuff that's going on and opportunities that I just have to jump on. You know, none of us are getting any younger, and as long as I still have my faculties and my health and my drive to do these things, yeah, I'm going to keep my foot on the gas as much as I can. Now, you know, I have a moderator. Her name is Janet, and she will reel me in when it's necessary. But she also understands that I was born a triple HD, triple D, quadruple D. I mean, I'm not happy unless I'm doing two or three things at the same time. Mm-hmm. So that's why I tend to get a lot of things done. I don't know how good they are all the time, but I'm not happy unless I'm busy. And I think that's just going to be how it is till I drop, whenever that is.
Well, okay. And then right before the show today, we talked, and once again, you had to stop the presses. You need to get stuff into, breaking news, into your next book. You've got to call your publisher. You've got to hopefully get this into a new episode of the new show, and blah, blah, blah. That this is what is it? What is it that you have to stop the presses on, Scott? Well,
well, first off, let's just back up for a sec, okay? The subject matter that is probably nearest and dearest to my heart is, the Knights Templar, the medieval order of Knights Templar, the fugitives of the medieval Knights Templar order that came to North America, that aligned with Native Americans, left a bunch of clues and a bunch of evidence of their presence here, and eventually handed that obligation off to the modern-day Freemasons, which I am now a part of, and created this nation we now call the United States of America. I mean, that is the premise of the work that I'm doing dominantly, and is really the core of the book that I'm about to publish. Now, having said that, I know what the story is. I know what happened. I know how it all transpired. But the point is that you have to have evidence to support this. It's a great theory. We're happy for me and all that, but I have got to bring the best evidence I can to the table. And there are not a lot of things out there. I mean, I think that there's a lot, but in the grand scheme, there are relatively few. And when you have something that suddenly presents a new face to you, a new body of evidence that you missed or did not realize was there, and then all of a sudden it's like, holy crap! I just had to jump on it, and this happened yesterday after our last shoot when we were out on the East Coast, and we were looking at something that probably 99% of the people that are listening right now have never heard of, but they will hear of very soon, and I can't tell you what it is specifically because it's in the show. But what really happened in the field was brand new evidence that presented itself, that we brought back, we collected digitally, we brought it back, we analyzed it. It had to be compiled for about a week and a half. And then we looked at that data yesterday, Janet and I and another guy by the name of Jerry Lutkin. Jerry Lutkin is on the team that's working on the Telpiat tomb. He's been working on it for many years and still is. So this guy's, he's dialed in. He's a true scientist. He's one of the most skeptical people I know, but we analyzed this data and came to some startling conclusions that had to go into my book and will be presented on the show, and it will be something that people are going to go, damn, that is cool.
Does it involve rocks? Does it involve inscriptions?
Yes.
From the Freemasons?
No.
Earlier than the Freemasons?
Correct.
So it's the Templars?
Yeah, it is.
Man. And this evidence was found, and I love you, Scott. I love you. This was.
No, you're doing good, man. What are you, 3 for 3 now?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was pretty
going.
good. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
I'll shut you down when you get too close. Don't worry.
Well, it was unearthed here in the United States, in America.
That is correct.
East Coast,
Yes.
Northeast.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay, so Northeast. Is it script or is it a symbol?
Yes.
It's a scripted symbol? Wow. And
I'm just messing with you. You're getting too close.
I
man.
know.
I will say this, and then I'm going to stop. It is an inscription.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a mind blower.
Scott. Okay.
When you hear this whole story, you're just going to go, "Oh my God, this is amazing." You will. I'm not embellishing. I'm not trying to blow this up. It's awesome.
Okay. All right. Okay. So
and now you know why I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm excited too, and I'm excited for the new season. And this evidence will be in season 4.
Correct.
Okay.
It absolutely will.
All right, now let's go. Let's preempt the networks. Let's talk about season 4.
All right. Well, yeah, and you're right. The network is going to be making an announcement this week, and they've been gracious enough to let you and I have our conversation here. Although I don't know if they could have stopped us anyway.
That's right.
I mean, you and I go back a long ways, and seriously, I really appreciate your support and your friendship, and it's great. But
Scott, let me jump in.
Okay,
let's have some continuity here. I'll try to get some continuity to our conversation, which is impossible. But okay, so you've got a new home. You have left History Channel. What's your new network?
Travel Channel.
You're on the Travel Channel. Travel Channel's doing some exciting stuff these days.
Yes, they are. They have, and I don't want to sound like I'm an expert about the history of Travel Channel because I'm not. But my understanding is they've really kind of done a big shift in what they're from the programming that they've done historically to really delving into looking into historical mysteries, which, of course, is right in my wheelhouse. And I will tell you that the network executive that we work with, and he is a terrific guy. I met him for the first time last summer, and, man, I thought I had a lot of energy. This guy has some fantastic energy, and he has always been a fan of the show and actually tried to bring us over to travel for a couple of years and was successful this past year. And I could not be happier with him. We're back with Committee Films and Andy and Maria Oz and a lot of the people that I worked with in the first 3 seasons. It's been a reunion, and we've pretty much picked up right where we left off, but we had over a 3-year layoff. And if you stop and think about it, for a show to come back like that on a different network that's basically the same show, I don't even know if that's ever happened before.
No, it's like
it probably has, but I'm not aware of it. And in a way, not to get too carried away, but it's a resurrection of something that I thought was going pretty good, and I felt like there was a lot of unfinished business. And to have this opportunity again, it's just amazing. And I'm just thrilled. I don't know what else to say. It's just amazing.
It's like getting the band back together.
It is. No, it is.
Yeah.
Literally getting the band back together. And I have to tell you, when they introduced me to the production company, Andy and Maria had put together a little pitch reel. It was like a pitch reel, but it was like well, actually, you guys saw it. It's posted on Facebook, and it says, sometimes, things aren't finished, sometimes, and it was really done well. It was dramatic. And then everybody, they called the whole company in to watch this video, and then you hear the music. Da, 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 and then I came walking in right when they showed me, and everybody just went, no!
Right.
It was fantastic, and it was emotional. It was something I'll never forget, and it's been great ever since. These people worked their butts off. Let me tell you.
Now, when's the premiere?
The premiere is May 28th, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 Central, and the first episode I have seen, and it's great. And let me just say this, okay? The only thing I can tell you about this episode is one of the things that I have heard in the past about some of our other shows is people say, and I don't agree with this because I think we find a ton of stuff on our show, and we have in the past, but some people say, well, you never find anything. You know what? In this first episode, we find something. And that's all I'm going to say.
So, okay. What were some of the locations that you got to shoot in? Like the first episode, where are you guys? Well,
you should be a private investigator.
Yeah, but these are simple questions. I could.
Well, let me just say
I'll take it easy on you, Scott. I want to be surprised,
I have to be coy, you know that, but
yes.
I will say this. We have been to I can name some of the states that we've been in.
Sure.
California, Arizona, Louisiana, Oregon, Minnesota, just about every state on the East Coast. We are still going. We have one more trip abroad. We're going to be going to Canada. We've been to England, Scotland.
All in one? All
over. All over. Wyoming, Colorado. All over. Just Pennsylvania. Just really great locations. Great locations.
How many episodes?
10.
You went to all of those states and countries for 10 episodes. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I'm missing some. I know I'm missing some, but Wisconsin, I know we've been there. Illinois, we've been to. I know there's more. I just can't think of them all right now. You know what happens is when you're doing this, everything becomes a blur. And I will say this, we have met some incredible people. We've had some wonderful tipsters that have turned us on to some great mysteries. Experts that we've had on the show have been fantastic. You will see some familiar faces from past shows that we've had. And you will also see some very famous people.
Well, we'll talk about
American heroes.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of them. Yeah, we'll talk about some of them after the break. What I wanted to ask you, and which we'll discuss after the break too, is it laid out, the 10 episodes, is it one long quest, or is each episode a standalone story?
They're all standalone stories. Now, having said that, for example, this thing I was just talking about that's connected to the Knights Templar, that is just, in my mind, I look at that episode, which is a standalone episode, but it is really more of a chapter in a much bigger book of episodes that we have already done on the Knights Templar, and hopefully, if we're lucky enough to get another season, we will continue down that road. So, and there are other episodes where we have similar subject matter we've looked at in the past, but from a completely different angle or perspective.
And who is coming up with the show ideas? Is it you? Is it a team effort? Or is it your producers?
Well, it's always a team effort, but some of the episodes are definitely what I call my stuff. Some of the episodes are the production company, and some of them are the network. The network says, hey, we want to do shows like this. And, you and I probably had a conversation like this before, where back when I did the first 3 seasons, there were some episodes that, quite frankly, the subject matter was not something that I wanted to do. And, there were, they said, well, a lot of people that watch your show like this stuff. Well, I thought about it, and I go, I said, I ask people to be open-minded about the stuff that I feel is important. I think turnabout's fair play. And, and what always happens, it happens every single time. I might go into an investigation thinking, well, I'm not really sure how this is going to turn out. And then I get into it, and all of a sudden, I'm hooked. And I start getting into it, and something that, there have been a few instances where I said, this isn't going to be interesting. And I'll be damned if it didn't turn out to be maybe one of the best episodes that we've done. And it's really opened my eyes to subject matter that, I just didn't have an interest in before. Now I'm interested. So let that be a lesson to me, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? You're not getting any younger, and the only time to learn is now. That's it. You've always got to keep your knowledge on. Let's take a break right here, Scott. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Scott Wolter, exclusively here on Fade to Black, to talk about and announce Season 4 of America Unearthed. More with Scott right after this short break. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Real Scott Wolter, because there are imitators out there. We'll be right back. You're listening to a preview of Fade to Black. To get the full episode, go to jimmychurchradio.com and get our podcast. Click on the podcast banner or sign up in the membership area for downloadable MP3s. Everything commercial free. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Scott Wolter is here. We're talking tonight on Fade to Black exclusively about Season 4 of America Unearthed. It is premiering May 28th on the Travel Channel. Now, Scott, right before the break, we were talking about some of the personalities that are featured in Season 4. Tell us about some of them.
Well, let's see. We haven't shot it yet, but I do have to give a shout out to one of my dear friends, Alan Butler. Do you know Alan?
I do.
Alan Butler probably knows more about the true ideology of the Knights Templar, medieval order of Knights Templar, than anybody in the world. He is also one of the most wonderful human beings I've ever met. Brilliant, gracious, funny, and I just love him. So you will see Alan, and of course, if you see Alan, you know what that means, right? Well, let's put it this way. Alan Butler would not appear in a show about Bigfoot.
No. See, okay. And who else? I'm going to come back to Alan in just a second. Who else? Who else is featured this year?
There is a woman who is well known that is going to appear in one of the episodes. She is actually quite famous and is now running for a seat in Congress. And this is a woman who got, I don't know how else to say it, but she got completely screwed. She was a spy working for the U.S. government, and she was outed back in, I think it was 2004, for purely political reasons, and it was horrible. And not only was it, and it was payback for an article that her husband wrote talking about the Bush administration and some of the things that were going on in the Iraq War. And as payback, Dick Cheney specifically outed Valerie Plame, who was working as an undercover agent, and that was it for her. Her job was over. Her career was over. And it was purely political payback to her husband for the article that he wrote that was absolutely true, exposing some of the corruption and things that were going on at that time. Valerie obviously was not too happy about that, and it was funny because we shot with her, and I can't say enough good things about her. She was wonderful. She was professional. She was funny, and we just had a great time together. And about a month and a half, not even that, after we wrapped with her, she announced that she was running first for Senate, and then she switched and she's running for Congress and down in New Mexico. So I wish her all the luck in the world. She's incredibly intelligent. She's passionate. You know, I can't say that I know her super well, but the person I spent a couple of days with and I talked to subsequent to that, we became friends. I think would make a great representative in Congress, and I think we need more women represented in government just in general. I mean, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, we need more women. There's half of our country is women, so I think it would probably make sense to have more of them representing us in government.
What and now the show is America Unearthed. What does she bring to the program?
What she brings to the program is, and I think this one is on the list. I got to be careful. Well, let's put it this way: you know what she did. And, you know, our country has been around for about 250 years now. And, you know, spies have worked in our government ever since the founding of our country. And so that's part of our history. And the activities of these spies have done a lot more good for our government than any of us will ever know, because that's the way it's supposed to be. But she does help me uncover one of those spies that worked for our government at a very, very critical time in our nation's history. It's a fantastic story, and the mystery is to try to uncover who this person was, and I think we nail it.
The age of the United States, I don't think people really grasp what we're dealing with here. But if you think about it, and you go back to like the bicentennial, right? 1976. Yep. Bicentennial, right. We've got a president that is like 75 years old. The country is only 200 years old. He's half the age of the United States. Right?
Almost, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean,
and that's how young this country is. And I see it as, besides yourself and a few other researchers out there that focus on the United States, but the United States of America has always been like the redheaded stepchild when it comes to history and research. Right. But in reality, like your show, America Unearthed, it's the gift that keeps on giving. There is so much to discover here, isn't there?
Oh my gosh, yes, and in so many different fields. I mean, you know, I've had people criticize me and say, "Well, you're not a historian; you're a geologist. You should be sticking to the rocks." And I say, "Well, what does it take to be a historian?" Basically, you know, you have to read a lot, right? and immerse yourself into the subject matter. And depending on what the subject is, maybe you even go to some of those places and spend time researching the history of those places, of those people, of the events that occurred. And, and I've done that. And I've also spent time talking to the world's experts on whatever subject it is that we might be investigating. So, and there are a million. I mean, there's literally a myriad of stories, of mysteries, of questions about our country that would go on long after I'm gone. But then think about the world as well, and that's one thing that I think you're going to see with our show in season 4 is we're not landlocked investigating questions just here. We're looking at questions in other countries as well. I mean, these are things that people in this country know very well, and I think are going to find fascinating. They have connections here to the United States, but the central question we might investigate in an episode isn't necessarily based in the United States. And I love that because there are all kinds of things going on all around the world that I think people in this country would find fascinating and interesting and worthy of investigating. And we do.
Now, going back to this new artifact with the inscription on it from the East Coast, what language is it in?
Ooh. Well, let me flip it around on you there, Hotshot.
Oh, you don't ask me the questions.
No, wait a minute. I know you're the interviewer, right? But I got to do this to you.
Okay.
Now, this is a fair question. I've already hinted that this thing has to do with the Knights Templar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
So, I'm going to give you an opportunity to guess which language it is in. I will absolutely answer the question, yes or no, but you only get one guess. So, put on your thinking cap.
Okay.
Think about the Templars carving an inscription. What would it be in?
French.
You get one guess.
French.
Negative.
Aramaic. I don't know. Okay, well, see, they wouldn't inscribe in Hebrew. They wouldn't have Egyptian hieroglyphics. It wouldn't be German. It wouldn't be English. French.
Hold on one sec. Let's just do a quick Templar 101 lesson. The Templars were based in France. Their headquarters was in France.
Right.
You could make the argument that there were more Templar knights in France, on an average basis year to year throughout their existence. Well, throughout the existence that everybody thinks about, but they were in multiple countries, literally dozens of countries, all through Europe, into the Holy Land, all through Scandinavia, the British Isles. I'm talking about that's well documented. So I think sometimes people, and rightly so, think about the Templars in association with France, but they were all over the place in Europe and the Mediterranean region and into Scandinavia, like I say. And so,
Okay, so it's not.
That's fair, right?
Okay, is it an ancient script? I mean, it's not going to be cuneiform.
No.
Right.
No, it's not.
And it's not going to be some kind of Nordic Scandinavian rune. Oh, it is.
I didn't say that.
Aha.
I did not say that.
So it's Scandinavian rune Templar.
Nice try there, pal. That's pretty good.
Well, okay. Now, okay. I'll throw one more back at you. Could you read it?
Actually, I could.
Okay, so it was runes. Okay, so what do you think? What do you think the dating on this is? Is there a date?
It is not dated, but I will tell you that I did some geology on the stone. I did some relative age weathering,
Right.
and I think it's old. I think it's many hundreds of years old.
Okay, now everybody wants to ask this question. I'm just going to do it now. How do you date rocks? Okay. And specifically this one. Michio Kaku and I one day had a long conversation about, a site down in Bolivia that was purported to be 15,000 years old, right, with megalithic structures. He's like, man, it's the Ice Age, man, and you can't date rocks. And I said, well, wait a minute. And he said, no, you cannot date rocks. I don't want to get into that conversation. And that's
said that?
Michio Kaku.
Well, Michio, you gotta tap the brakes, buddy, because first off, Jimmy, and I'm not trying to be smart here, but there's really two things we're talking about here. One is dating rocks is one thing. The age of a rock is a completely different thing,
right.
And we do know how to do that. Okay, what we're talking about is dating man-made impact on rocks. That's sort of the collective thing, like when was standing stones put up, or when were standing stones put up, when was an inscription carved, when
right.
were these pictographs made, when were these petroglyphs made. That's a different question than the age of the rock, right?
So
the age of the rock, it could be 1 billion years old, or hundreds of million, or millions, or whatever the age of the rock is. That's not the age. That's not what you're talking about. You're talking about something that human hands have altered in rock, and dating of that human alteration, whether it's an inscription, standing stone, whatever, that's a different question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But and you're not looking at organic materials that are in the grooves or anything. You're not dating that.
Well, in some cases you can, but that's the exception rather than the rule.
Right.
And just to give you sort of a brief synopsis of how we go about doing that, and let me just first state that there are many situations where people will come to me with an inscribed stone or something, an inscription or whatever, and they'll say, can you date this? And the answer is maybe. And in many cases, the answer is no, I can't. And the number one problem that I run into is context, provenance. Where did this thing come from? It's no different than an arrowhead, right? If you go out in the field and you find an arrowhead and you pick it up out of the ground, you're done. Now, you might be able to say something about its relative age based on the style of the point that's associated with a particular culture, with a particular time period.
Right.
But if it's in context and it's collected within a horizon and there's datable material in that horizon, you potentially can nail that down pretty close to when that thing fell into that spot, right?
Right.
Once you take it out of context, it's extremely, if not completely impossible to do. So that's the first thing.
So
but
with
whenever
this,
I'm doing things on rocks, like this one that I'm talking about, this inscription that I'm talking about,
right.
First thing I need to do is look at the context. I will say this much. It's carved in the bedrock. So context, I understand. That is number one thing. That is I know where it's been since the day it was carved. It has not moved from that spot. Okay? So I know what the weathering environment is like. That's number one. That's the key thing. Secondly, I need to know exactly what that rock is and what it's made of, what minerals are in it, so I can then get a better sense of how that rock is going to weather over time in that particular environment. Make sense?
Yes. So the rock is, you've got the context because the rock has not been moved.
Right. And if it's in a particular part of the country, I can look at weather records for the last 100 years or whatever the records we have are, and you can presume that the weathering has probably been pretty consistent for however far back you think this thing might go. So that is a known parameter, and that's huge. But if somebody sends me a picture of an artifact and they, and they say that they found it in New Mexico. Well, I believe them, but that chain of custody, if you will, that provenance is broken. And we will never, ever be able to convince the scholars, the skeptics, whoever, 100% because we just don't have that documented. And, I know people aren't trying to do something wrong. They're preserving it and they want to find out about it. But you see the conundrum we have here?
I do. Is it on private property or public land? I'm asking because, has it been disturbed? If it's public property, there's a chance that, a lot of people, but if it's on private property.
It has not been disturbed.
It's more of a controlled environment, right?
Yes. It's a consistent environment. Let me put it to you that way. And I can tell you that it has gone virtually unnoticed.
How and so what do you do about provenance and something like this in that there's no public record of this from 50 years ago or 100 years ago?
There is some oral history.
There's oral history. Okay.
Yes.
And when you have something like this, Scott, I'm totally intrigued, and once I get on the scent, I just can't get off of it.
Well, you got a bunch of people listening that are probably going, "Go, Jimmy, go, get him."
How do you get this vetted? How do you get it verified, or are you the one to do the vetting and verification?
Well, quite frankly, yes, I think I'm probably the best person in a position to vet this.
Right.
And when when it all comes out, I think you'll understand why. In more ways than one, not just my geological background, but my knowledge of the Templars, my knowledge of Freemasonry. Although this is not this wasn't created by a Freemason, but there are things related to Masonry that there are aspects of this thing that, as a Mason, as a person with a deep interest in the esoteric aspects of Freemasonry, that I will say that I do see some of those things associated with this inscription, and that has been extremely helpful. And quite frankly, many scholars, and I'm not trying to take a shot at them, I'm just going to state something that's a fact. One of the things that I came to realize when I became a Mason was that there are certain principles and things in Freemasonry, and especially in the esoteric aspects of Masonry, that scholars just have no concept of. And I'm sure if there's any listening, they're probably saying, "Oh, come on, I can handle that stuff." And the answer is, I don't know if you can. And the reason I say that is because when you become a Mason, or you join any one of many orders that take you through an initiation process where they enlighten you with new knowledge, one of the things that happens, that must happen, and if it doesn't happen, you will not be initiated and it will not happen, is you need to be truly humbled. In other words, you have to admit that you only know so much, that this knowledge that is about to be imparted on you can only be received by you when you are mentally ready for it, or as we say in Masonry, duly and truly prepared. And what I'm getting at is that I wasn't ready to become a Mason until I was into my 50s, because I was not ready to be humble, truly humble, and realize that there's so much that I don't know, and then be truly ready to receive it. And I can tell you that one of the discoveries I made that I publish in this book called about the cryptic code that I discovered in a ritual would never have happened prior to my becoming initiated, And it was the key, it was the final key to the mystery that unlocked the Kensington runestone. And I can guarantee you there isn't one scholar that I have interacted with in the 20 years I've been working on the stone that will be ready to receive this information, to truly understand it. And I hope I'm not confusing you, but does that make sense?
It does. It does. And we'll talk about this when we come back after the break. But
Okay.
One of the reasons why that you've been fighting this battle with scholars and all of those professional academics out there is as soon as you bring up that hyphenated word, pre-Columbian, it's like all bets are off. They just don't want to go there. And just like this artifact that is about to be revealed, once again, Scott Wolter has got some exciting evidence that, is it pre-Columbian?
I think it is. I do. I think it is.
So there you go, right? Prepare for the battle. Here we go.
Well, you know what? I don't know. I'm not going to do any more battles, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to present the evidence.
Right.
And if they want to critique it, fine. If they can find issues with anything I've done, fine. Tell me. Because if I've made a mistake, I want to know, and I'll fix it. Because it's not about me being right. It's about getting the right answer. So I'm all ears. But if all you want to do is just take shots at me because you don't like the results, well, then you can jump up you know where.
Right, right. And that's the way it should be, Scott. Look,
Yeah.
What if you and others dealt with it in the opposite way, in that you didn't reveal what you found out? Well, that's a crime. That's
Well, it is a crime.
Yeah, that's
I've
the
seen
exact.
it work the other way. Let me tell you, I absolutely have.
You know, and isn't that the point? You know, that all of those critics and skeptics out there, what do they want? They want silence and censorship, and that something that potentially could be really cool and help our history to be talked about, or the opposite. Don't say anything about it because you're afraid of what's going to happen on the back end. That's the crime, and that's when the skeptics win, and that's what's wrong.
Well, that's not going to happen here. You know that. We're not going to let that happen, pal. No way, no how.
And okay, we're going to continue this when we come back, and we'll continue, of course, talking about Season 4 of America Unearthed. I want to remind everybody it premieres May 28th on the Travel Channel. It's got a new home. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Scott Wolter, host of America Unearthed, right after this short break. Stay with us. You have just listened to a full hour free preview of Fade to Black. To get the full show, all archives, just go to our podcast section at jimmychurchradio.com. You can also sign up to be a Fadernaut in our membership area, where we have downloadable MP3s. Go to jimmychurchradio.com. Go Bagley Tappy.